My name is Ataul Munim. I'm an Android developer working at Monzo Bank in London. If you have any feedback or questions for me about this presentation or topic, feel free to reach out by email or Twitter. I'll put this slide back up at the end as well, and I'm particularly interested in feedback around the structure and format of this deck. And since I'm already asking for feedback, I'd also appreciate some live feedback as well, in the form of answers to questions that I'll ask. So feel free to raise your hand when I ask a question, or since this is a late afternoon session, you can give more of a subtle signal. Does everyone understand? Perfect. So I work for a bank called Monzo. We've got over 2 million customers in the UK, and we recently announced that we're expanding into the US. We're a mobile-only bank, so that means we've got no branches except on GitHub. I started there about 9 months ago, before which I spent almost 5 years at product consultancy called Novoda. And this is where I learned about accessibility, especially on Android. Since then, I've written articles and delivered presentations about what accessibility is and how we can make our apps more accessible. I'll use the terms accessibility and inclusive design interchangeably, but for me, the important takeaway is that it's about making our products usable by as many people as possible. There's one question that I invariably get asked, which is, how do I start? And it's hard. In my previous job, I had the advantage of working in very small teams with visibility on what was changing in the project. Monzo was very different. We have about 15 to 20 Android engineers who work in about 10 to 20 different teams, each of whom make changes to the app every single week. We need everyone who's working on the product, firstly to understand what inclusive design is, and secondly to understand what their role is in facilitating it. Over the last 6 months, I started to recognize the work that other people have been doing, and I joined in. Our apps haven't become more accessible in the last 6 months, but our teams are on the right track. Does everyone know what Slack is? Or does anyone not know what Slack is? Okay, I see one. So I can do this quickly, it's fine. Slack is an online collaboration tool, primarily used to send messages. You can have one-to-one conversations, or you can create groups and have conversations with multiple people at once. These groups are called channels, and channels are usually named by topic, like accessibility or cats. I got access to the Monzo Slack a few weeks before I joined, and I was so excited to see that that was already an accessibility channel. Does anyone have any accessibility channels in their Slack? One? Something similar? So at Monzo, we use the channel for 3 things. Firstly, we use it for customer escalations. Our customer support team deals with hundreds or thousands of chats every day. If there's a question that they don't know the answer to, they can escalate it to us. And if there's a query or feedback about accessibility, it comes here. We've got around 10% of the company in this channel who can either deal with the query directly or direct it to someone else who can. We get feedback in this channel frequently, like this one which came through last night. Even for the people who aren't responding in this channel, they're gaining an appreciation for the issues that customers face. So there's a lot of value in getting feedback in this one place, in this one channel. We also use this channel for information sharing. If there's an article we've read online, like this one from Marvel app, we'll share it in the channel so that everyone can have a look. If there's a local accessibility meetup, we'll ask if anyone wants to go as a group. So the channel helps foster a sense of community. Recently, we've also been sharing updates on various accessibility initiatives we're trying. This is me, excitedly telling everyone how many people use non-default text size in the app, followed by me telling everyone that I made a mistake. Slack can notify you if someone types one of your keywords. So, for example, you can add accessibility as one of your keywords. Anytime that someone says the word accessibility in whatever channel, apart from DMs, I've tried, you'll get a notification. Be mindful not to intrude on or derail conversations. I've done this in the past, and it's not fun for anyone involved. If it is appropriate, though, let them know about the accessibility channel, and in future, maybe they can ask their question there. Who's got a Pocket account? Does anyone know what Pocket is? So Pocket is a service that lets you save bookmarks to articles that you say you'll read, but you'll never do. Don't let the accessibility channel become an accessibility pocket. One way to prevent this is to ask questions if someone just posts a link on its own, and then you can spark a discussion. If you know someone who's working on something that might be relevant, tag them in. Make sure that the channel isn't only for sharing third-party content though. Use it to share product updates and projects as well. If you get user feedback, like we do at Monzo, direct the accessibility issues to this channel. And finally, remember that the aim is to increase the engagement from people in the company. Be cautious not to become a gatekeeper. Encourage first-time posters with positive emojis and engage them in discussion. And don't feel like you need to be involved in every discussion. We have this concept of one-to-ones at Monzo as well. And it's supercharged at Monzo. We do it frequently. So one-to-one is a face-to-face meeting with someone else. It can be done remotely or in person, and I found that one-to-ones were essential for getting buy-in, both from peers and high-level stakeholders in the business, to consider inclusive design. And I think I was pretty lucky in this respect. Hugo, our VP of Design, was very vocal about accessibility in the early days of Monzo. Shortly after I started, we landed Mary, an advocate for inclusive design, as CTO, and Lindsay as VP of Product, who recently organized a group trip to an empathy lab to learn more about accessibility. The purpose of one-to-ones at Monzo is twofold. One is discuss something specific that one or both of you want to talk about, or two, learn more about the people that you work with. Recently, I worked on a project called Monzo Plus with Carlos, an iOS engineer on my team. We already had a few one-to-ones, and he knew I was quite keen to improve the accessibility of both apps, the Android and the iOS app. I shared with him that I wanted to make the Monzo Plus sign-up UI scale with the user's preferred text size. And he saw that it was important to me, and he was on board to try it. We would use Slack to send each other GIFs and screenshots, and also loop in Simon, our product designer, whenever we had questions about how things should align as the UI grew. We ended up with a flow on both platforms that supports variable content sizing. I don't think this would have happened naturally, because just in the nature of the way Monzo works, we're very fast-paced and trying to ship stuff as fast as possible. And so it wouldn't have happened naturally, at least not consistently, between the two platforms. It needed two people to commit to doing this together. But we shouldn't forget to engage with people from other disciplines as well, not just engineering, because everything is connected. This is Katie. She was the data person for Monzo Plus when we first released it. Oh, is my screen going dark? Sorry. Carlos and I worked with her on Monzo Plus analytics, and I had a one-to-one with her recently to discuss how we could use the information that we collected in this flow. So the idea was simple. Let's consider a subscription flow, smaller than Monzo Plus, because we don't have that much time. Our first screen is onboarding, telling the user what the feature is about. The user can fill in details using a form, customizing the subscription. And finally, the user reads the terms and conditions and can accept them. When it comes to analytics, we're interested in two things. One is measuring a baseline, and two is verifying that any changes to the app offer an improvement on the baseline metrics. We can use page view analytics to determine that 76% of users, these are made-up numbers for this made-up example, who saw the onboarding navigated to the form. And 53% of users who saw the form navigated to the terms and conditions screen. So that's our baseline. Next, we wanted to filter the matrix for users who have TalkBack enabled, TalkBack being a screen reader on Android. While a comparable proportion of TalkBack users make it from the onboarding screen to the form, only 21% make it from the form to the terms and conditions. So we expected the proportion of users to be similar to the baseline metric, 53%. But such a big difference tells us that either TalkBack users really don't like this subscription, or that there's something wrong with the form. But that makes it hard for TalkBack users to navigate. Lindsay, on the right-hand side of this photo, our VP of Product, asked if anyone could give the project managers at Monzo an introduction to accessibility. I shared a quick overview, and then I also explained what efforts were already underway, including this analysis of data that I started with Carlos and Katie. One thing I really liked from their weekly meeting was the end, where they spent a couple of minutes scribbling on Post-its. I didn't really know what was going on, but then they started to swap them with each other, and it turns out they were thank you notes. How nice is that? And although I appreciated this positive response, there were two things I learned from this session. One is that I want to understand what feedback I'm looking for from a session before I go to it, and then chase it afterwards so that the next session is better. And second, even though the core content was similar to what I'd delivered before in other meetings, there was more engagement from having customized the slides for this particular audience, for the project managers. Being explicit about how this issue affected them and what was expected of them at this time made it more relevant than if someone external was brought in to give a similar presentation. I invited the design team to a workshop on using mobile screen readers. So I guess you could call it a soft launch, because I put a quiet message in one of the Slack channels, didn't tag anyone, didn't send them reminders. I just put the calendar event in, and whoever turned up was going to turn up. We went through the basics on both iOS and Android, and then we had some tasks that they had to attempt in the Monzo app using a screen reader. It was really lucky that my colleague Dylan also attended. So all of the designers who attended used iPhones, unsurprisingly. And although I can use VoiceOver to a basic level, I wouldn't have been able to answer their questions. So Dylan's an iOS engineer and he's got a very keen interest in accessibility as well. By keeping the group size small, we managed to get some discussion going, and people were able to help each other through some of the exercises. I found that it was difficult to keep everyone on track with 9 people. It's okay to limit the size, I found. You can always offer another workshop at a later date, and hopefully it's going to be better with the feedback that you get from the first one. Bringing someone who can help during the exercises is really helpful. This could be someone who's done the workshop before, or someone who's just got a lot of understanding about this information. It's difficult to answer lots of questions at the same time, so having someone on hand that can go to different groups around the room or keep track of queries from remote people is really handy. And finally, the last thing I learned from that session was to verify what equipment is needed. It was pretty loud in a small room with all the screen readers at the same time, so headphones would have been a good idea. Make sure there's also a similar number of Android and iOS users, or ask attendees to bring both phones. It's not super fun to be the only person on Android when everyone else is on iOS. We had one person who came in with an Android phone, and everyone else was getting along with the exercises, helping each other, and she was stuck with me. I ran a similar session with the Android team. It was a little easier because everyone had Android. I told everyone to bring headphones, and it was great. It was very quiet. Unfortunately, when people have their headphones in, they can't actually listen to your instructions. So keeping the tasks time-boxed and using some visual cues, it helped keep people on track for the most part. It was great to see discussions popping up where people shared their past experiences as well. Sarah, on the right-hand side, did a lot of accessibility testing while she was at Microsoft. So she was able to help with people's questions. And it even got competitive. So the Android engineers were trying to one-up each other by going to hard mode, which is where you can disable your screen entirely, and then try to use TalkBack as a fully blind user would. This wasted a bit of time because a lot of the engineers had trouble turning their screen back on. A lot of our engineers are remote as well, and the workshop was doable over a Hangout, but with an on-screen demo and the slides, it was hard to keep them on screen as well. Because they mute their microphones, it was difficult to see if they were keeping up with everyone else. So that's one thing we could have done better, is introduce a second screen or have someone on hand to keep an eye on the remote folk. So now that we've introduced concepts to both the design team and one of the engineering teams, we needed more help. At Monzo, we have an all-hands meeting every Wednesday at 5 p.m. It's hosted by employees with feature updates from teams across the company that want to share what's new. At the end, there's a Q&A session with a C-level executive. And last February, myself and Natalie, one of one of the champions from the vulnerable customers team in Monzo wanted to give a shout out to the accessibility Slack channel. We explained what the channel was about and encouraged people to join. If you've got a forum in your companies where you can present what you're working on to the wider company, this can be really effective. That week, the accessibility channel grew from 70 people to over 110. And last month, I took another shot at the all hands to give everyone homework. I had one particular goal in mind, which was to get as much feedback as possible. The task I gave 1,000 people was to turn on large text and keep it on for a week if they could. If you've never done it, it gets very frustrating very quickly because you're not used to having such little content on the screen, at least nowadays with large phones. I created a channel in Slack where people could post screenshots of anything that looked broken. And the purpose wasn't necessarily to get a list of designs that we needed to fix, but more to understand whether there were common themes that we could use, some design principles or guidelines or rules, so that we didn't have to keep going back to the designers, we could just apply this ourselves. Just some things that are valuable for this is to keep it short. An all-hands company meeting is a very expensive meeting. Give a clear call to action. I told people to turn on large text, and everyone tried to do it while I was talking. And set expectations as well. They didn't have to organize their thoughts. I didn't ask them to, put their screenshots into directories or label them. Just dump it into the channel, and I'll sort it out later. So there's a few takeaways from what we've been doing at Monzo. One is, if you're doing workshops or even meetings where people are unfamiliar with the topic at hand, keep the sessions small. I found that having 4 to 6 people is ideal if you're the only one in the session, because it gives people a chance to discuss amongst themselves and also ask you questions without there being too much back and forth. Secondly is make sure you get feedback and also chase the feedback. It's really important to get timely feedback because people will forget everything that was annoying about a session or things that they thought could have been improved and only remember the nice things because people are generally nice. And finally, alternate between small and frequent efforts with big and infrequent efforts. It's really easy to feel like this is an obligation and it's your sole responsibility. And although it is an obligation, it's not just yours, it's the collective responsibility. If it's too much, ditch it for a few weeks and pick it back up when you're ready. Our apps haven't become more accessible over the last 6 months, but our teams and processes are evolving and they're on the right track now. If this is something that interests you, Monzo are hiring. For more info, check out the top link. And apart from that, I'm really keen to get feedback, so I'd appreciate it if you have any now. You can email me, hit me up on Twitter, or talk to me afterwards. Thanks a lot.